Bitcoin is currently trading at around 105,500 after reaching new all-time highs at the end of last month. We've got the stock market that is inching closer and closer to its all-time highs. Is risk back on? Are we off to new all-time highs this summer, or are we in for more of a pullback and a correction? I'm going to get into the charts and answer those questions in this video. So if you do like this content, please do keep watching, smash the like, and let's get into it. So Bitcoin here we can see is currently pulling back after obviously reaching new all-time highs at the end of last year. I do have the feeling that Bitcoin could come a little bit lower. I think it should come down and retest this trend line here at around about 103,000 or well 102, 103,000, depending when we actually get down there. What I am, however, expecting for Bitcoin is that it does come down further over the next couple of weeks. And I would personally like to see this trend line tagged once again. We've got strong support around here. We've got the 200-day moving average, fairly close to both the 50 and 100-day. So if we could come down into that cluster of moving averages, hold that as support, I do think that puts us then in a stronger position to attack all-time highs again, possibly later this year now. Obviously, the summer months are defined by fairly low volume, fairly choppy markets, fairly sideways price action. So I'm not really expecting this summer to be any different. Obviously, Bitcoin has been on a big run. If we just measure where it's actually been from the April lows up to where we are today, we can see that is a pretty impressive sort of 45% move. So yeah, I wouldn't be expecting too much further of this move without a significant pullback. Obviously, what we might do is we might run up to around 110,000 and then start to come back off. That is definitely on the cards. So we could have one more push higher, but I'm not expecting new all-time highs probably until a bit later on in the year. So I am expecting more of a sideways choppy market, similar to what we saw last year, really last summer, where we were in this sort of choppy sideways range for a few months. Weakness coming in August and also in September. And I think probably something similar plays out. I'm thinking there could be a little bit of Q3 weakness in the market this year. And if we just take a look at the past that I actually had on Bitcoin, that I'd drawn on Bitcoin on the last video, you can see we'd had the pump, we had the sweep above previous all-time highs. We're now seeing that pullback. I think we can pull back into the middle of this month, have another push in July, probably pulling back later on in July, maybe a push in August, and maybe a final sort of sweep. If we were to form a summer range, maybe a sweep of the lows of that range in September, before having a real go at making an expansion higher later on in the year. So this is actually my preferred path. And I think just sort of zooming out here, this would actually take us up to this long-term trend line that we've got in play here that obviously connects, I think this one might go all the way back. Yeah, this one is pretty much a line of best fit from the 2017, 2021, and the current highs. So I'm thinking there or thereabouts takes us to around, what's this? Around the sort of 125,000 range. Look, I think anywhere around this trend line here is a pretty good place to be taking some profits, and that's certainly what I'll be doing on the rest of my Bitcoin position. I probably will look to reload a bit of Bitcoin at the summer lows if we do come down lower. So yeah, and that would also likely be a reconnect as well with this 50 moving average. So this 50 moving average has really been held as support throughout the whole of this bull run, and that is what I'm really expecting us to be doing, is to potentially come down and reconnect with that 50-week moving average and then try for a final high later on in the year. And part of the reason that I'm thinking that this is going to be the path here is just really based on what the stock market is doing. Obviously, just before I finish on Bitcoin, I will share the more bearish path, which obviously I did draw out. So again, it could be that if we do fail this sort of level around the mid 90s, we actually come back towards the 70s, low 70s. And I mean, if we hit the 60s, I think that will be our sort of bearish structure in place then for us probably to make a lower high and come a lot lower. If we do hold this, then there is potential that we do run higher, but I very much see this as more distribution if we do get that breakdown and obviously lose this 50 moving average. So that would be, for me, the warning sign would be, does this 50-week moving average hold or not? Obviously, if it does hold and we consolidate in more of a bullish consolidation closer to the all-time highs, that will definitely lead me to think that we're going to set up for much higher prices towards the end of the year, or I say much higher prices. I think 120 to 130,000 is on the cards, but obviously the risks are there, and this is the issue. This is the issue. We're coming to the end of the bull run. We've had a fantastic nearly 3 years now of pretty much straight upside with some sort of consolidation and pullbacks along there, but nothing too significant. And we're really getting to the business end of the cycle now, where a lot of the big traders, a lot of the big whales are going to be looking to bank profits and get out the market before a more sizable correction. So as I wanted to show, I did want to look at the stock market as well and kind of say a lot of this, I think, plays in with what's going on with stocks. We've got the stock market pushing up to all-time highs here. I do actually think that the S&P could get all the way up to all-time highs before this is all said and done. So if I can just try and sort of drag this higher, if it lets me, doesn't want to let me, but we could end up doing something like that where we do actually sort of poke higher over the summer. Obviously this gets shifted across a bit and we set in a new all-time high, and then we see some weakness into September, and then eventually we look to go higher towards the end of the year. So that is something that I think is kind of on the cards for the stock market. But obviously so far things are playing out, kind of fairly as expected. If we do pull back from here, I don't expect we'll go too low, but we might come down to around 5,500, and then I think we'll see some more strength coming into the market again. But absolutely, I am thinking we could see this push up here to make a new all-time high before then starting to pull back. So it's going to be fairly interesting to see how this plays out, but it could play out something like this. I think sort of strength into June, maybe into the middle of June, and then a sort of pullback into sort of late July, August, or sorry, late June, early July, another push up into August, and then we're just kind of doing that sort of choppy consolidation before new all-time highs later on in the year. So that is my preferred path on the stock market. On the S&P, obviously NASDAQ, I'd expect to do something similar, but the NASDAQ has been so strong. Stocks really have been so strong since shrugging off these tariff fears. And to me, like I say, my preferred path right now is certainly a retest of the all-time highs in the stock market, if not getting very, very close to all-time highs over the summer before consolidating and pushing up again. And obviously looking at Bitcoin has really sort of led that move in a way. Bitcoin obviously hitting new all-time highs before the stock market, and potentially now looking to go into some consolidation, and that very much tying in with what the stock market is about to do also. So that's the update really. I am bullish on stocks. I'm still, in terms of my positionings, for full disclosure, I am long the stock market. I've also got a sizable cash position as well in case we see any of these dips. And I just feel that these prices, I think there's no reason to chase prices here. I do think stocks will come down over the summer, certainly towards the end of the summer. there will probably be better opportunities to buy stocks. So I'm not in a, I think if you're not in the market here, there should be no rush to jump in and deploy to the stocks right at these levels. But yeah, I mean, I'm holding exposure. Obviously, if we do get closer, as we get closer to all-time highs, I will probably start to take off a little bit of risk, start to build up a bit more cash to look to buy any sort of summer lull or summer lows that come in into September, and then positioning probably fully long for a expansive move into Q4 when this big beautiful bill should have been passed, when we might have a rate cut or certainly be a lot closer to a rate cut. Obviously, it seems at the moment like the Fed are not willing to cut rates. Why are they not really willing to cut rates? Because they've said that tariffs are likely to be inflationary. So they're waiting to gauge the impact of tariffs. Obviously, even though the tariff talk has been softened, tariffs have not gone away. China are probably going to have more tariffs slapped on them soon. Obviously, going through I think it was a 90-day freeze on tariffs, or I can't remember whether it was 30 or 90, but anyways, going through a tariff freeze. But that doesn't mean that tariffs are going away for good. And of course, the EU as well. EU asked for a freeze, but what I'm trying to say is we still are in an environment where there still will be tariffs, and this will be inflationary. We are starting to see signs of reacceleration of growth and reacceleration of inflation, which is probably going to tie the Fed's hands in terms of making further interest rate cuts or in terms of shifting to QE, which is also why I think that altcoins are probably likely to struggle more so over the summer than Bitcoin will. So if I'm looking at my preferred path for Bitcoin, obviously I've got Bitcoin consolidating, potentially coming down and reconnecting with a 50-week moving average some point later on in the summer. If we actually look at Ethereum, I have Ethereum lightly showing weakness, and as Bitcoin's consolidating and chopping and coming down slowly, Ethereum's probably coming down at a more rapid pace. And I do think at some point Ethereum will come down lightly by the end of the summer and get close to its lows. It might not retest its lows, but I do think it will put in a second low before seeing more expansive and more aggressive upside later on in the year. I don't know if Ethereum is going to go that high or not. What I do think Ethereum could do is maybe put in another sort of 2x move. I mean, from sort of here to here, it was pretty much a 2x. If we come down to, let's say, 1,700, potentially, do we get a move up to, say, I don't know, 3,400, which would be a 2x. Potentially that is another 2x that Ethereum looks to put in later on in the year. So we just need to be sort of mindful of what's going on with sort of the correlations. I think Ethereum's had a great run. I think altcoins have had a fantastic run over the last few weeks, really since those April lows, absolutely exploding across the board. And I do think it's a really, really sensible idea to look to maybe manage risk and take some profits off the table if you are up on altcoins, or certainly if you're back to sort of levels you were getting into before this big breakdown and you've been holding through. I think it's a pretty smart decision and smart area to look to take a little bit of risk off the table and maybe take some profits off altcoins here. And that kind of goes for Bitcoin, and that's really what I'll be looking to do on some stocks as well, sort of going into the summer and thinking that potentially we will see a sort of cooling off over the summer before going again later on in the year. So just going back to the stock market then, stocks obviously, if we look at a daily, stocks are starting to pick up quite nicely. I did want to also share that we do have a Tom DeMark 8 count, so we'll get a Tom DeMark 9 tomorrow on the stock market, both on the S&P and NASDAQ. So obviously that's something to be mindful of, as those can usually lead to reversals. And if we just go back to Bitcoin, obviously nothing like that is on Bitcoin. But like I say, I do expect Bitcoin likely to trade down maybe into the mid-90s over the next couple of months. And if we look at obviously the path I've drawn on this chart, maybe as low as the high 80s, or even, I mean, this 50-week moving average is coming up fairly quickly. Maybe by the time we get to September, it is in the 90s. So maybe the low 90s is all we get, and we make that reconnect and try for one more push higher later on in the year. So just to recap, just be cautious. Yeah, I think it's still a trader's market. I'd be looking to take profits when you get them in the current conditions. But yeah, I am thinking that dips over the summer are likely to be for buying. I do see one more push higher later on in this year. So that is how I'm positioning myself, skimming a few profits over the summer, looking to get fully allocated again going into Q4. And yeah, we'll obviously monitor things from there. I'll be back very soon with another update. I had to have a little bit of dental work done over, well, actually, it was, when was it? It was actually last week. And before that, I had a flare up and an infection, and I was just in no position to be sort of talking too much, especially on a camera. So, yeah, I will definitely be getting back to the regular sort of weekly updates, bi-weekly updates going forward. So hopefully you've enjoyed that and have a fantastic day. And I will talk to you all again very soon. Bye for now.